Hi guys, it's me, Trudy Lee. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody is well today. There's so many things going on in this world. It is January 18th, 2023. So there's a lot of things going on. The Republicans have just taken over the House, and I know we're all lamenting about that and worried about what's going to happen. And I am too. I'm worried also. I know everything's going to be okay, but I know it's going to be chaotic for the next 2 years. So I asked Spirit, what is it that I need to convey to the public, to you guys, that would be beneficial to you? What can I do? How can I help? How can I be of service? And that whenever I do a meditation and talk with my spirit team, that's, the first thing that I want to know. What do I need to know? What do I need to convey? How can I be of service? And this is what I got. Spirit told me that I should be focused on telling the story of my own journey. Tell them your story. And so that's what I'm going to do. We're going to take our minds off what's going on in Washington and just take a few minutes here with me and listen to my story. And I have a long story. So this is going to be in many, many parts. So this is just the beginning. Okay? So I'm going to begin as a child. I grew up with 3 sisters and 1 brother, family of 5. I remember when I was very young, I would see things. I would see cartoons and see things on the wall. I would see fairies in the grass, in the field. Also, my sister, I remember, she's about 3 years older than me, and I remember her telling my parents that she was seeing things in our room. As I was seeing things, we all had one room together. The girls, 4 girls. I think it was 3 girls back then. We didn't have our youngest sister with us yet. But she would go to my parents and tell them that she was seeing things, and I think they thought she was crazy. They treated her like she was crazy, and I just stayed quiet. I didn't tell them nothing. I'm like, I'm not crazy. I'm saying nothing. So I didn't tell my parents anything about it. But I would have these dreams, and I can remember them so vividly. I've had them throughout the years. Not long ago, I had this dream that cars are flying in the sky, that I would literally see cars, driving in the sky. It was so weird. All kinds of trucks. I remember seeing trucks, and recently I saw this dream again. It's such a strange dream, but it feels like a memory because I've dreamt it so many times. But I would see these fairies in the field, and of course, I wouldn't tell my parents about it, but I would tell my sister. I had a little sister. She was about almost 3 years younger than me, and I would tell her, there's fairies in the field, and I would tell her to go look, and I would say, did you see it? Did you see it? And she would never see it. Every time that I would tell her, it would be gone by the time she would look. So she would always they would just think I was making things up, but I would try to bring their attention to it, but they could never see them. So I've never told it to my parents or anything because I'd already seen what, they poo-pooed on my sister. And even though I was really young, I understood that they thought, something was wrong with my sister. I don't remember exactly the words, but I remember some whispering and talking about my sister that maybe something was wrong with her, so. And they made her feel that way, and that's unfortunate. My sister, I feel like my sister was very, very psychic from a very young age, and they scared her so much with it that she thought it was of the devil, and, she's, I don't know, they hurt her for sure, because they were just, that's what they thought. They couldn't help it. But anyway, what else? In this field that I saw the fairies, we were told never to go into this field. We had a big, big ditch surrounding our house. My parents rented this house, and there was a huge ditch along the front of it. We had a bridge that we'd have to cross over just to get into our driveway. It was a big culvert, and there was water moccasins all over the place. They would come up into the yard. One time they even got into the house, but they were, in the fields and everything. So my parents would always tell us, stay out of the fields. You might step on a moccasin and get bit, and it's a poisonous snake. It'll kill you. So I would never go into the field. There was this field. On the other side of this field was a house. This house had a Hispanic family that lived there. Very large family. I would say probably at least 5 children also. They had a bunch of kids. It was a great big old white house, and I was just so attracted to those people. I wanted to go over to that home, and I wasn't allowed to go there because they were Hispanic and we weren't allowed to associate with them. I kid you not, I come from a very, very prejudiced family. So we weren't allowed to speak to them or have anything to do with them. But my mother wanted us to go outside and play every day. So I would go around this field. I wouldn't cross the field. If I could just go across the field, it would have been so much shorter to get to their house. But I would take the long route all the way around the field and go to their house, knock on the door. And I was a little bit older than their youngest child. He was in kindergarten, and I was maybe in first or second grade, something like that. And they would always invite me in, and we'd watch Sesame Street. They had a great big old console TV, and it sits on the floor. So we'd lay on the floor and watch Sesame Street together. I remember that very vividly. And my mother wouldn't allow us to come in and watch TV because she would, I don't know, she'd be doing, chores and stuff, and she wanted her kids out of her hair. So I would sneak over there many, many times. I was so enthralled with these people. The mama was so nice. She was so nice and kind, and she would always be cooking all kinds of food. They always had plenty of food in their house, and she would offer me food. Every time I'd come, do you want to eat something? And she spoke in very little English, very little. But she would always be kind and offer me food, and I would never, ever accept it, y'all. Never. Because I wasn't even supposed to be there. I couldn't eat their food. I was too afraid to eat their food. This lasted, saying no to food and not being able to be comfortable eating in front of people lasted till, gosh, high school for me. But anyway, that's another thing. But anyway, I remember one of the girls that were teenagers. She was a little older, so I was pretty young, but they were all very sweet, very kind to us all. They really were. And I think my older sister, she was friendly with them too, and would sneak over there once in a while, but we would never do it together. We were always separate. I went into her bedroom. She asked me if I wanted to come into her room for some reason. They all had their own rooms, and she had, stuffed animals and all kinds of stuff that we didn't have. We had lots of toys and stuff, but they were all in one room, It wasn't like we had something of our own. So she changed shirts in front of me, and I remember that she was wearing a black bra. I was just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. I didn't wear a bra. I was just a little girl, but I'd seen my mama in her bra. My mama was super modest. She never, ever paraded around naked. Never. We never seen her naked. Honest to God. Never, ever seen my mother naked. But I seen her in bra and panties before while she was getting dressed. And she always had a white bra on. I didn't even know black bras existed, and that just blew my mind, y'all. It really did. I was enthralled with these people. They were so interesting, and they had so many different cultures, and they spoke different language, and they behaved differently, and they danced and they partied. And at like 4th of July, they would have fireworks, and the kids would have sparklers, and they would be having a wonderful time, and we'd just be sitting there watching them. Because we weren't allowed to do those things. We weren't allowed to handle, sparklers or anything. And my father wasn't about to set off fireworks. No way. So, we would just watch the sky to see if we'd see any fireworks. But they were always having a great time playing music, barbecuing, having a wonderful time, and we wanted to be a part of that. I did. I just wanted to be a part of it. I really did. There was so much love in that home. But things came to a halt. I remember the mother got into a really bad car accident. Got into a car accident, and I guess she was hurt. Back then, I can't remember what happened. All I know is things changed after that. She was in a bad car accident, and I couldn't go over there anymore. And I didn't. I didn't sneak over there anymore or anything. So um, that kind of ended that a little bit. But I remember we would come home from school, and there was a white fence around our property where the ditch was, and my mother, many a day, had dead snakes hanging over the fence. She had killed moccasins because they were everywhere. That I would not even want to live there with kids, or I would not let my kids out of the house. I'd be freaked out about it. You would not believe how many snakes she killed. So many snakes that would come up into the yard. They were just crazy. It was terrible. It really was. And she had little kids running around. We played outside all the time. All the time. Um, it was a lot of fun. I played with my brother mostly. We played Cowboys and Indians a lot. So it was Mac and Mac Low. Because if you ever watched all the old movies, cowboy movies, there was always a Mac, hey Mac, hey Mac, you know? And so we picked that up, me and my brother. We were so little. We're only 14 months apart, so we're very close. I'm closer to him than any of the others in age, and we just played a lot. And so one of us would be Mac, and the other one would be Mac Low, because we both wanted to be Mac. And I decided one would be Mac and one would be Mac Low, and we'd switch back and forth of who was who. We would act like we were camping and playing, and we had a great old time. We had one of those mimosa trees growing in our yard that had the pink flowers, and they would have like it looked like a brown beanstalk, and it had little hard seeds, brown seeds in them, and we would open them all up and have a bowl full of these little seeds and act like they were our beans that were eaten at a campfire. We had so much fun. It's so much fun being a kid and having an imagination and doing all those things. I'm afraid the kids nowadays don't get to do those things. They're so busy playing on their phones, they're not using their imagination, but we surely did. We were always, we were the good guys, always thwarting a robber or something, a bank robber like you'd see on the movies. And I'll tell you what, funny thing, we would decide that we were going to go run after the bank robber, and he would go left and I would go right around the house, and we would run, and we would just be running at full speed with our head down. I can't tell you how many times we hit heads and knocked each other down. A whole bunch. Maybe that's what's wrong with me now. But, my father, he worked at NASA. My daddy worked at NASA for Philco Ford. And you would think back in those days that they would probably was paying him a good amount of money. You would think he was making a good living. And I don't know. I don't know how much they paid at the beginning or what. But I remember my mama always would go to the thrift store and buy our clothes from a thrift store when we were real little. Because I can remember going to the thrift store and it was a big table. It wasn't like it is now, everything all, divided off. There was a big table of clothes, and I could barely see over the top. I remember if I stood on my tippy toes and pushed myself, I could just barely see the top of the table. And there was all these clothes that she was going through. And, so she bought a lot of our clothes from a thrift store. But, there was 5 children, so maybe she had to do what she had to do, I guess, to make ends meet. And I don't blame her. If you have a bunch of little kids running around, they don't need to have brand new clothes on. Secondhand clothes are just fine. So, but I can remember that very vividly, going to the thrift stores and trying to see what was on the table. I wanted to see what was going on. I could barely see, though. But as I got older, I remember she would take us to the store and, for back to school shopping, and we would put our clothes on layaway. Y'all remember that? So we'd put all our clothes on layaway, and she'd pay for them and get them paid for until, it was time for school to start again. And she started waitressing, so she had a little bit of extra money so she could do that. So that was good. That was helpful. She would she would waitress during the evening. While after my dad would come home from work, she would go to work. I don't know how they worked that out, but I remember she worked at a Mexican food restaurant, and she would bring home Mexican candies and stuff, and we loved them. We just loved them. And I always had a dog in my life. Always. I love animals. I love them to death, but I really was especially fond of dogs, and I would always want a dog. If I didn't have a dog, I would beg for a dog. Beg. I would look in the newspapers, I could read, I would look in the classified. I wanted a little poodle so bad. But of course, even back then, they were very expensive. I think they were like, you know, I don't know, they were hundreds of dollars even back then. So I couldn't buy one. I was just a little kid. I would call and ask them how much they were and everything. My little girl voice, how much is your dog? I wanted a little poodle so bad. My mother knew how much I loved animals. My mom was never fond of animals. She might like an animal, but she doesn't want to touch it or pet it or it to be in her house. That's how she likes animals. I like them outside. I'll scrape my plate clean and give it some food, and there you go. That's their deal. And back in those days, it was a little different. People didn't vaccinate their dogs like they do now. So many times I would get a puppy, like somebody would give my mama a dog or or a puppy follow me home from school or something. I had a few puppies die on me. And I'm sure that was from distemper or parvo or something like that. They would get sick and then they would just disappear. They'd be gone. They'd be like, your daddy had to take that dog away because it was sick. I don't know what daddy did with the dog, but it was gone. And I didn't ask questions because I basically knew that it wasn't good. I wouldn't want to know. So every time I would lose a dog, I would cry until I got another one. I would just, beg my mother until I got another dog. But yeah. And now y'all see, if you've been following me, right now we have 3 dogs in the house and 4 cats. 3 dogs and 4 cats. Yeah. And right now, Turk is on the loose. He jumped off the deck and he's gone. I'm gonna have to go find him in just a minute. My mama was, she was fun in a lot of regards. She was young. She was a young mama and she was a lot of fun. She played games with us a lot. Um, but she was very quick to anger. She had a very bad temper. And also, if she told you something and you didn't do it, you better watch out. You better watch out because she'd slap you across the face just as quick as she'd look at you. I remember one day, I was very young. I was walking home from school with my sister. I was way too young to walk home from school. But my sister, like I said, she was about 3 years older than me. So I was probably like in second grade and she was in fifth grade. And we were walking home. And I saw a beautiful rose in somebody's yard. And we'd walked by this yard many times. And there was a lot of roses on this bush. And so I thought, well, I'm going to pick this rose and bring it home to Mama, because it was so beautiful. And I'd walked by and seen it so many times. And that day I just decided to pick it. So I picked it and brought it home to my mama. Oh my God. She was so upset. She got so mad at me. She busted a gasket, you guys. She had a major meltdown. She asked me, where did I get this rose? And I said, from a rose bush in front of a house. And she took a switch off the tree. She made me hold that rose. And I'm telling you, this was far away from our house. We lived far from where I picked this rose. Just walking to school, I'm sure it was over a mile for sure. Walking to school, I would say it might have been even 2 miles. It took a long time, but anyway, maybe my little mind is, thinking it was so far. But it seems like to me as an adult, it was far away. But she switched me down the road, you guys, all the way down the road to this lady's house that I had picked the rose. Made me knock on the door and tell them I was sorry for picking their rose, and they were like, "That's okay," and then switched me all the way back home. And I guarantee you, my little legs were bleeding. They were bleeding. It was awful. It was terrible because, of course, you can only imagine I was screaming and crying the whole way. So it left an indelible impression on me, you guys. Um, it was, it was so hurtful emotionally and physically. It really was. That's just one of the many things that she did. But I regress. I don't have all bad memories of being at home. There's some terrible, terrible memories, but there were good memories too. We were raised Baptist. Um, we were the dancing Baptists, though. We weren't strict Baptist. My mother, she wasn't a very religious person at all. As a matter of fact, I feel that she basically went to church to get rid of us. You know what I mean? Just to have somebody take care of us for a little while. Uh, she would go to church a couple of times, and then she wouldn't go at all. And we were still going, even though she didn't go. Uh, my father was Methodist, and I do remember us going to a Methodist church for a little while. It was very close to the Baptist church. And as a child, I couldn't tell the difference. You know what I mean? The Baptist, Methodist, they were all teaching the same thing, and it didn't feel anything different to me. But my mother didn't like the Methodist church. I'm sure she had her reasons. And we went to the Methodist for a little while, I guess, to make my dad happy, and then we went back to the Baptist. My father never went to church. Never, 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 never. He didn't go to the Baptist church at all. But my mom would go. She got us started, and then she just quit going because the bus would come and pick us up. No matter where we lived or anything, the church bus would come and pick you up and bring you to church. And we'd go to Sunday school. I remember we moved a lot when I was a child. We lived in a few different apartment complexes, and then we had some rental homes too before my dad finally bought a home. I was a teenager by the time he bought a home, and so I didn't really get to live in it that long because I got out pretty quickly. By the time I was 17, I was gone. But when we moved, the church didn't know where we went to. They didn't know where we were, and my mother didn't go to church, so us kids were happy. We were glad. Oh, we don't have to go to church anymore. We were so glad. And then one day, the church bus drove into our apartment complex while we were there on a Sunday, and all the kids were getting off the bus, and then the leaders from the bus, I don't know, some of them came off the bus and said, "Oh, here you are," and we were like, "Oh no, we have to go to church again." So they found us again, and we started going to church again. And it didn't last too long because my parents moved away from that apartment complex. Um, Shortly after that, I think a few months later, we moved again. And we moved to a home this time, and the bus didn't really stop at individual homes. I guess they would stop at places like apartment complex where there's a lot of children that they can fill the bus up with, but they didn't really go to individual homes. So we were safe. We didn't have to go to church anymore. We didn't want to go. Our parents didn't go, and so we had no incentive of wanting to go. We were getting older, we had other things to do, and we wanted to be free, So we're getting closer to teenage years. And I remember on the weekends, it was the time that we had to do all our chores anyway. So, we would play our music really loud. Remember those big old stereos that you'd have, a console stereo with a turntable inside and all, and we would have the countdown on, countdown the top, what was it? American Top 40, I think it was. But we would, listen to music and do our chores and get everything cleaned up. And everybody would have, what they had to do for that day. Like somebody had to dust, somebody had to vacuum, things like that. Well, you guys, I just got interrupted. I just got a phone call from my son-in-law asking me to come pick up the kids from school. So I had to go pick up Brody from school. He does live here with us, but his mom has been out of town, so he's been with his daddy. So I brought him home to see his kitty cat, Frazier. Frazier's here in the room somewhere playing around. But to get back to my story, so I think I was at the part where we all had, our part to do. house cleaning. And that day, I was supposed to vacuum. So we lived in a 3-bedroom apartment with 5 kids. Uh, the youngest one was very, very little. She was just a toddler. We had a bunk bed, so us girls were all in one room, and the boy got to have his own room because he was a boy. And even though he was probably in grade school, just a little kid, he's always got his own room because he was the only boy. So we had bunk beds for us girls. We had 2 sets of bunk beds. But the youngest one, the toddler, she would sleep with one of us. She would either sleep with my parents. My oldest sister could always talk her into sleeping with her, so she slept with her quite a lot, although we all tried our best to get her in our bed to cuddle her. We would all, promise her all kinds of candies and things if she would come sleep with us. She was so cute, and we all just loved her so much. Still do. Anyway, it was my turn to do the vacuuming in our room. So I was supposed to clean it up and do the vacuuming. Everybody had to make their own beds. And I had vacuumed my room. And I had a Chester drawer that I shared with my younger sister. I always shared things with her. And so it was, I'm 8 years older than her. So I was pretty much in charge of everything, right? So I had a lot of stuff on the top of the bureau. I loved to collect things when I was little. I'm still kind of like that now. But I had a jewelry box that one of my friend's father had gone to work in the Philippines and come back and gave me this black glossy jewelry box that I just was in love with. And I had all kinds of little jewelry trinkets in it and stuff, brooches and all kinds of things. I've always loved, vintage, always. Love's Baby perfume from Avon. Remember that? I had that on my bureau. I had a little figurine of a Lhasa Apso dog. It was a blonde Lhasa Apso. I had this crush on this boy at school, and his mother, what she did she showed Lhasa Apsos. She would take him to shows. So she was, that was her profession, I guess, to raise Lhasa Apsos. So he gave me this little figurine. And I loved it. I just loved that little figurine because I love dogs, And at that time, I didn't have a dog at all. So that little figurine was my little dog. Well, my mother came in my room to inspect my work to see if I had vacuumed properly and the room was clean, because we weren't released to go. It was on a Saturday, we weren't released to go outside and play and do whatever we wanted to do until we'd done our chores. And she was not satisfied with the job I had done. I don't remember not doing it good or anything. I don't know. I don't know what I did wrong. I had vacuumed it, and maybe I did it too quickly, or the vacuum cleaner wasn't good. I don't know. But when she came in there, she was unhappy with my vacuuming, and she said, "You haven't vacuumed this room." And I'm like, "Yes, I did." And she's like, "No, you haven't." And she took her arm and she swept across my bureau and just knocked off all my trinkets, my perfume, my little doggie, my jewelry box went flying. All the jewelry went out of it. It broke. I remember the top of it broke and everything. I was devastated. I mean, devastated. I couldn't believe she did that. I was just in shock that she did that. I just cried and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And she said, "Now clean it up." So, my little doggie didn't break. It got a little chip in it, but it didn't break. My perfume didn't break because it was carpeted. So if it hadn't been carpeted, everything would have broke. But it was carpeted, so it didn't break. But you don't want to mess with my mama. When she tells you to do something, you better do a good job and you better do it right. You'll be darn sorry. Oh, there's Addie Cat. Hey, Addie Cat. She's jumping all around here. Probably Fraser will be up here in a minute. There did come a time in my life that we all had the need to pray to God and ask God for help. So even though we had stopped going to church and there wasn't even any talk of it anymore, my mother didn't pressure us to go, and we didn't have to go anymore. And I was probably 12 or 13 years old, somewhere around there. That came a time when we all needed to pray to God and ask Him for help. And we did. We were all praying for God for help. And I'm going to leave it at that and pick it up on the next story and tell you guys what happened. And it changed my relationship and how I felt about God and the divine and the creator. And it kind of took me away from God a little bit for a while. So it was a very sad situation, and I'll tell you guys about it on my next video, okay? All right, so I'm going to leave you hanging there. I got to go find that dog. My 120-pound Anatolian Shepherd is running loose, and I'm sure, my neighbors aren't appreciating it too much. He doesn't mess with them, but they're scared just looking out the window watching him walk by because he's so big. But I will be back with the rest of the story, okay? This cat is just pacing back and forth. So do something kind for somebody. It'll always come back to you. Love you guys, and I'll come back with the rest of the story soon. But if you'd like to get a reading with me or have a healing session, I really love doing the healing sessions. I feel like that's my specialty. So if you need a healing, hit me up down below. Send me an email. Friends, family, anybody that you need. I'm happy to help you with. Okay? Love you guys. Bye for now. Take care.